So I will share something, I will tell you something that nobody would have told you and nobody could have told you. Okay? How can you get an internship with an American professor at an American university? Now, what happens is that if you have work experience of any kind, internship of any kind, research experience of any kind with an American professor, and then you apply for admissions at American universities, your chances of getting admitted at higher ranked universities can increase dramatically, because now you have somebody recommending you who is from here. Because I'm sure you know that, right? When you're applying to schools in America, one of the key components of your admission packet are your recommendation letters. And if you can show that you have worked on some kind of research project with a professor at an American university, that professor will write you a recommendation letter and your CV will also be enhanced because of it. And many people therefore have asked me, many undergraduate students particularly from all over the world have asked me, how can we get an internship at an American university? In particular, rather than asking how they can get an internship, they have reached out to me asking for an internship position. So I felt that if I make a video on this and explain everything that happens in the background, many of you can really benefit from it. This is Chaitanya Sambhara, faculty at the College of Business, University of Texas, Arlington. So now many people write me asking for some kind of project, if they can get an internship in the US, if they can come here and work under me. And my response to all of them has been quite elaborate, but it is very difficult to communicate each person individually, right? So hopefully this video will make everything clear for you. Now, when you're looking for an internship, there are two parties involved, of course, right? It's you and the other party who is supposed to give you that internship position, right? That intern position. Now, all you know is you, your side, your party, but you don't know anything about the other side. And I will disclose as much as I can the perspective of the other side, knowing which you will really understand how to tackle the whole situation. Now, who are you? Most likely you are an undergraduate student who wants to come to America and work with a professor at a university, right? Now, what is your proper background? You are a student, you want some experience so that you can get better opportunities when you apply for master's or PhD degrees. That is all your perspective is. I'm looking for some kind of opportunity and I would wonder if the other person will give me the opportunity. Now, how can you go ahead without understanding the other side? Before I explain the perspective of the other side, let me make it very clear. Universities rarely ever give out internships. Okay, getting an internship experience or any kind of research experience at an American university while you are an undergraduate student abroad is very uncommon. Okay, but it's not that nobody does it. People do that. How does that work out and why you should know the other side's perspective? Okay, now if you'll have to look at the whole situation from an American professor's perspective, this is how things are. As a professor, you have a lot of research responsibilities. Okay, if you are at a research university, research oriented university, you have to work with doctoral students, sometimes even master students, and once in a while maybe even undergraduate students. As a professor, your perspective is to carry forward your research agenda, and doctoral students who are spending 4 to 6 years of their lives with you, getting trained under you, are the ones who are your real assets. Now, it's a long-term relationship with a student, right? You spend immense amount of time and effort working with that student, and that student is also taking your research forward, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship where both parties grow in their professional careers. One party is taking their research agenda forward, the other party is learning those research skills so that they can do independent research later on. Therefore, for a professor, it makes complete sense to collaborate with PhD students because they are willing to put their time and energy in a long term. Okay, then somewhat less preferred are master students, definitely less preferred than doctoral students who come here just for 1 or 2 years. They get their master's degree and then they just leave. Now, why would a professor want to invest their time and energy on someone where it takes quite a bit of their effort and time investment on training the master student? Okay, and after all your efforts, the master student will do a small thesis, graduate, and never see you again, right? So the professor has even less of an incentive to work with a master's student in comparison to a doctoral student. Now, you, some random undergraduate student somewhere abroad, wants 2 months long internship. Okay, from a professor's perspective, you are going to be here for a very short time, just one small summer, one very short summer, and then you know nothing. For the most part, I would expect that you hardly have any research skills. And not just that, you're not even working on your research skills to that extent. Okay, your background is not as strong as a master's student who has already completed a degree. You are still just a high school graduate. You do not have an undergraduate degree. And then you want professor to give their time and energy into training you, while they will not benefit much at all because you will do your internship and go away. So why would a professor want to spend their valuable time on some random undergraduate student who wants to go for an internship? Okay, now these are all my perspectives, and I believe that I would personally believe that you can generalize to, for the most part, everyone. So now you need a way to connect with that professor so that that professor can give you an internship, right? Now what happens is that in every single case that I have seen where a student has done a summer internship at an American university with an American professor, in every single case, there were some personal connections. Okay, the kind of personal connections were, in one case, there were 2 students who were doing their internship at a university in New York State. Their senior from their university was already a doctoral student at that university. So they approached their own senior, who was a PhD student, to see if they can get an internship. And the PhD student went to the professor and then said, see, I'm working on this and this research project. Some of the work I can probably relegate to some other people who will be very quick and talented, and I will be happy to coach them for a period of 2 to 4 months. So the professor's own time investment and energy was not all that much. Okay, in that case, because the professor had a very good relationship with that doctoral student, the professor agreed. Okay, in another case, where I know of a case where a student who was pursuing and who is pursuing his undergraduate degree in computer science in Bangalore, his older brother is a master's student at Texas A&M University and working on a thesis with the professor. Okay, and how did this student in Bangalore approach the professor? This student, of course, his own elder brother is working on thesis, right? But that elder brother himself is just a master's student. So this older brother approached another PhD student saying that, hey, I'm helping you with your own research project that you're working on with the professor, and I'm doing all this task, right? Some of the additional tasks I can actually relegate to another student, and I will be happy to spend my time and energy. So in this case, a bachelor's student approached a master's student, his own brother, and the master's student approached a PhD student, and the PhD student then approached the professor. So in this case, most of the time and energy put on training this bachelor student was by his own older brother who was a master's student. In this case, it is even easier because even the PhD student does not have to spend all that much time training him and making him do the work. He had guidance at home, literally. And of course, the professor hardly had to spend much time at all. So in this case, it was very easy for the professor to let him come. And remember, in both these cases, the first case where these students from another country, their senior was doing his pursuing his PhD in New York. In all these cases, they were unpaid internships, to the best of my understanding. I think it was an unpaid internship in New York, and in this case of Texas A&M, I know for sure that it was unpaid internship. However, the professor agreed to sponsor the application fee and all those things from his own pocket. Because remember, if you are coming to America for an internship, you cannot sponsor yourself. The other party which is hiring you must sponsor you. So that is one of the other reasons why professors hesitate to bring students from abroad and give them internships, because they don't have strong incentives for putting time and energy on you. So now that you know that most of the things are not in your favor, how can you still try and succeed in getting an internship? And that is what probably you really want to know from this video, right? So now there are 2 or 3 things you can do. First thing first, never ever send mass emails to professors. Never copy paste emails and generic emails and write to professors. It will never work. You will never get a response. Now, what should you do then? In another video, which is linked in the description, I had discussed in detail how you should write emails to professors. Okay. Now, look at that video, watch that video and learn how to write good emails. Now, when you are writing an email to a professor, you need to somehow convince the professor that you are somewhat worthy of his time and energy. Now, how you do that is this. Go to that professor's website, and I would suggest that identify maybe 3, 4, 10 professors, not all that many. Okay. Go to their websites, access their research papers, at least bother to read them. Do not just read the title and abstract. Open those papers if you can, and then go through those papers and try and understand as much as you can, because a lot of people send me emails saying that I have read this paper of yours and I really like this part of the paper. I know that all they have read is probably the abstract only. They have not read anything beyond the abstract. Okay, because had they read the paper really, they would have mentioned something which is inside the paper. They would have looked closely at the paper. So I don't even bother replying to those people. Now, when you read the professor's papers, make notes. What kind of research questions they are asking, what kind of problems they are studying, what is the methodology they are using in those research papers, and how are they building up the whole story, and what kind of research agenda they are suggesting at the end of the paper, where you have directions for future research section. Once you have some basic understanding, read a few more papers, okay, and then draft everything that you have understood from those papers. And you must make sure that you have some interest in that area and you are willing to develop some knowledge in that area. Okay. Now, if it is a case where you know nothing about that topic, get a book, educate yourself, understand what is going on in that research papers, and then go ahead and write an email to the professor. Now, once you write a more elaborate email expressing interest and explaining why you're interested, with credibility that you have actually read that professor's papers, then the professor might be more inclined to talk to you. Okay. Otherwise, what happens really is that, as you might have seen in many countries, when you are stopping at a traffic light, these beggars come and knock at your windows, right? Most people don't give anything to them, but some people do. But why do they do that? Because there is not much time and energy investment. But you are asking the professor to give that time and energy invested in you. So you have to have strong reason. You have to give the professor a strong reason to even consider hiring you. Now, what you can do next is that rather than just reaching out to the professor, try and build connections with the doctoral students, okay, of that professor. See what kind of work they are doing and ask them, offer them a reason that you are willing to assist them in any which way you can. Okay, and that might be a better route to approach the professor. Okay, now the worst of the worst case, and it is not actually a bad case at all, make it clear that you are willing to do that work without any payment. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should definitely do that. If you want money, you go ahead and do that. But all I'm trying to say is that why would a professor want to give you money where it is professor's time and energy that is being compromised, or their team's time and energy is being compromised? So this is my personal suggestion, is that express interest to work with the professor, and if you really want that job, also try to convince or convey to the professor that you are even willing to do the same job remotely, so that the professor does not have to sponsor your visa or go through any such things. Okay, ask the professor to assign you some work, or at least the doctoral students, his team lab members, ask them to assign you some work, and you will perform and show them that you can actually do some good work. That can actually improve your chances of getting some kind of traction. Do you really think it matters where you are on location or if you are doing the work remotely? If you can get a paid internship with a professor in a university and you come here and work in person, nothing like it. But know that summer times are usually the dull times even in academia, and summertime is probably the only time available for you. So that might not work out for the most cases. Therefore, I'm suggesting, my personal view is that offer to do the work for free of charge. Now, in one case, not anytime recently, about 3 to 4 years ago, I had made an exception, okay, when I actually hired somebody to work through the summer for me. And in that case, that whole work was done remotely. That particular student who did all the work for me was abroad, was not in the US. I did not have to go through and file all that visa paperwork and pay for all that money. All I did is that I had the budget at the time and I paid, I think if I'm not mistaken, $1,600 for the whole summer. And I can do that even now, but I know that for the most part, do I want to do it again? It is just a lot of hassle and a lot of inconvenience, but at least I'm giving you some ideas. This student worked for me remotely with me not having to sponsor their visa, and that student made money, right? Now let me brag for a second, okay? This student who worked for me a year before that had applied to 6 to 8 universities in the US, and he was rejected from all those universities. He could not get a single admission. Now, after he worked for me, I wrote him a recommendation letter, and now he was able to show some research experience on his CV, and then he received multiple admits in American universities. Okay, he did his internship with me during the summer, and then that significantly improved his admissions, and now he works for Microsoft. So he has had a very good and successful career. Because at that time I had some extra work which I did not want to spend too much time doing, so I had to spend around 4 to 5 days working with him, coaching him what exactly I want him to do, how I wanted him to do those things, and then every week or two I used to check up on him, and he used to send me whatever the data that he was supposed to collect and process and send the refined data back to me. And I used to assess the work he did, and that is how he himself gained some research experience. And when he had some research experience, he wrote about it in his personal statements, and then he was able to enhance his CV, and he had my strong recommendation letter when he applied to American universities, because now he was getting a recommendation letter from an American professor at an American university. And that is any given day more preferred than some other professor somewhere abroad who nobody knows about. Because if you have a recommendation letter from an American professor, they can easily look that professor up and look at their profile to make sure that this professor indeed is doing some proper research work and has assigned that work to this particular student. And this is how you can try and approach the professors by first actually canvassing their research profile, what kind of work they are doing, and be prepared when you are communicating with the professor. And in some cases, they might want to interview you. So at least show a good profile and good background so that you can potentially get that internship position. So I hope now that you understand the other person's perspective. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind and God bless America.